What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the best week of the PGA season, Masters Week. So pumped for Augusta. Got a great show on tap for you guys. We're going to go through basically the entire field, bets, DFS, one and done thoughts. Justin and I in the top 200, or maybe it's like the top 250 now of the Pat Mayo one and done season-long contest. So it's been a good ride. Hopefully we can make a big jump this week and start contending for that first place prize. Justin, how pumped are you for this?
This is always just a fun week, and with all of the stuff that I hear coming about the golf course, and they might actually make it a real golf course this week. It's really exciting to get to see all the good players back together again, and the way a field should be, and albeit maybe the bottom of the field is maybe the weakest field in golf. It's just the whole aura of the week is just so great, and I love it. It's just always a great golf tournament. It always ends up having some kind of action that we don't expect and somebody playing really good. And I think that it's one of the few. I think the players is gaining up on Augusta for that reason. Is we know the holes, we know what's going on, we know what to expect, we know where the drama is going to be, and it's going to be a great week. I'm really looking forward to it, and I definitely will. I always end up doing exactly what everybody tells you not to, and that's basically doubling my bankroll for 1 week. So, but it'll be good.
Bear with me here because I know this is going to sound like a terrible flex. I've been to the Masters each of the last 2 years. I'm so excited to just be on my couch watching this year, watch every single shot of every single player that I can. The last couple of years, we've gone to the practice rounds on Tuesday, and then we've gone and done a golf trip. And so I've been on a golf course playing and just following on my phone for the Thursday and Friday at the minimum. I'm going to watch every single second that I can. If anyone tells me to leave the couch, I'm going to throw something at them. Like, this is my week. I'll be on the couch. I'll be watching and hopefully sweating some big wins as well. Before we get into all of the deep analysis on the guys we're betting this week, playing on DraftKings, let's start with some Tiger conversation. Everything kind of revolves around Tiger in the golf world. We're already getting, no surprise, we're going to hear this every time he tees it up, but we're already getting, the stories of, he was striping it. He was out driving Zalatoris, this and that. He looks healthy. His game looks good. What do you think? Are we actually going to see a competitive Tiger this week?
I don't think that anybody anywhere is doubting his ability to hit a golf ball, even to this day, right? I don't think that, or at least I'm not. I mean, he still hits it really good. His golf swing does look good. But this is not the easiest walk. Matter of fact, many will tell you it's the hardest walk. Yeah. And then if they do get a little bit of rain, like they're talking about, you talk about making that walk even harder, I'd be more concerned with his physical condition than I would be his golf game.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. I'd also say, this is one of the more extreme course fit models that we get on tour. In fact, the thing that stands out to me about the course fit model is that there's a 100% increase on the predictive value of short games around the green play. That's the biggest concern that I have for Tiger. As you said, no one really questions his ability to hit the golf ball. He's played twice this year, if you count the Hero and then the abbreviated showing at the Genesis. As bad as those results have been, his driving has actually been phenomenal. It's been, the bright spot for him. We always know when he shows up to Augusta, he's going to be able to strike the irons as well. Iron play does have a big emphasis, so that's great. All of that is great. Where I really start to get hesitant with Tiger is, but short game matters a ton. Every single time we've seen him, that's been the rusty point in his game for like the last 5 years or so. Like, that's just the part that's really held him back ever since he won his last green jacket. I don't really see that turning around when he hasn't been playing. Remember, he started the season saying he wants to play once a month. We've seen him once. It's going to be really, really difficult to show up with a crisp and just solid all-around short game.
And when he withdrew, and whatever he blamed it on, dehydration or whatever his excuse was last time, if that was simply all it was, I think we would have seen him again before now. So I think it's definitely more to it than just that. If he was fully healthy, I think he would have played another warm-up event for this week if he thought his body could handle it. I think that's the telltale to me is that, hey, he just doesn't feel like he could walk 72 holes right now. That's why, I mean, you're hearing a lot about 9-hole practice rounds. You're not hearing about the years past, Tiger would be out there early and grind it out and practicing and playing a lot. He's not doing that. And I think it's his body. I think it is weird that his short game, as we know, it's at one point was obviously the best in the world. And generally speaking, like coming back from injury, usually that's the thing that you can do the most of, right? If your body's not able to hit a bunch of balls or walk or play, you can usually chip and putt. You can usually do all that stuff. So it's odd to me that that's not the strongest part of his game.
Well, I think that goes to the point that even Tiger has made a lot, which is you just can't simulate tournament conditions, being under the gun, having that pressure. Even if you're someone like Tiger and you've won all these majors and you won 82 golf tournaments on the PGA Tour, you still feel the pressure when you get on the golf course, and it's just a different thing to perform under.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, so I went through it once in 13. I broke basically my whole right side of my body, plates, screws, broken ribs. I mean, it was bad. And I remember getting cleared to chip and putt. And I chipped, hours upon hours. And my first event back was the State Open that year. And I was driving it. I had to qualify, and then I was driving like 240. And I finished like 12th. I played so good because I just chipped and putted it so good because that's all I did for so many days. So I think that Tiger, it comes down to the being afraid to fail. And I think that might be the biggest thing for him when it comes to stuff like that, because people expect him to hit bad shots. Therefore, he's not as worried about it. When they see him chipping around the green, they expect him to hit good shots. And so the fearing failure is one of the hardest things for golfers. And I say it all the time when people ask me, what about this? What about that? I was like, dude, you have to be comfortable accepting people judging you for failure. You have to understand it's going to happen, but don't be so afraid of failure you don't give yourself the opportunity to hit a good shot. So I think if he has his mind right and he can get over that side of it, my biggest deal is I just don't think he can walk this golf course.
Yeah, the walking part is interesting because we have seen a much healthier Tiger in that sense. Like he was, carrying his son's bag. So I'm a little bit more optimistic on that side. I just don't think until we see some better short game that he has much of a chance to contend. Now, that being said, I do think he can show up, make the cut, finish top 20 or something like that. I just don't see him getting back into contention, which isn't by any means a hot take.
Yeah. I don't even see him playing that good, but it is Augusta and it is Tiger Woods, so there's definitely no doubt. If he's healthy, then I wouldn't be surprised to see him, finish middle of the pack. The problem is if he goes out there and struggles early on Saturday and he's really not feeling good, he's not going to be afraid to withdraw. We've seen that. He's not afraid to make the cut and then withdraw, which is a very odd thing to me. I guess when you got that many skins on the wall, it's a little bit easier to just be like, okay, I'm done for the week.
Speaking of crowd favorites, Rory comes in searching, of course, for the career Grand Slam. It's one of the more interesting appearances for Rory because for as long as I can remember, he's been one of the, one or two top favorites at Augusta to bring home the green jacket. This year, Scotty Scheffler is in a league of his own, just so far ahead of everybody else. In our projection, Scotty is 0.7 strokes clear of anybody else, 2.2 to 1.5. Just otherworldly how good he's been. We've got Scotty at 17.5% to win. Second best is 5.3%. It's weird. And then you also get like a second tier of Xander Schauffele in his own tier, at least just from an expected strokes gain perspective. He's the guy at 1.51, Rory down at 1.13. Can you make a case, Justin, that Rory's almost in like an underdog role this year that could really help him?
If he could find a way to tell himself that, yes. But I don't think he in any – like I think that it could. If he was like, hey, nobody believes in me, they don't think I can win. If he could get on that, I think it would help him a lot. But I don't think that he believes that himself. And I think he knows that he's a favorite, if not the favorite, next to Scotty. I mean, I think also everybody is aware that how good Scotty Scheffler is right now too. So I don't think it's not – well, I think you made a great point of everybody just has so much more data now than they've ever had. So they know where they stand.
Well, if Rory wants that motivation, all he's got to do is jump onto DFS Twitter, because DFS Twitter is convinced that he doesn't have the stones to win a golf tournament anymore, let alone the Masters. So if he needs that motivation, I know where he can find it.
Well, I would say that if you're going to go DFS Twitter, then and just by your the strokes gains prediction, you have to love Xander this week, right? Because you want to talk about a guy that everybody thinks can't get it done, even though he continues to play good in final rounds, he just doesn't play good enough. And now you get to a golf course where I think he's the one that has more of the underdog mentality that could really get something done this week.
Yeah, that's a good point. Now, it's a little bit different in the DFS side of things, because on DraftKings, Xander Schauffele is only $9,900. Rory is $10,800. And because, as you said, people have all the data, they know how well Xander projects, it looks like Xander is going to be supremely owned at $9,900, where it's almost like people are saying, you know what, I don't care if he doesn't win. If he finishes second or third, I'm going to really like him at that price tag, especially if they might even start Scheffler, Xander, in which case I don't need Xander to win because Scotty's going to win. So that's how a lot of people are going to approach the top end of this board, which means Jon Rahm, Rory, Koepka, and Wyndham Clark could end up being really low owned, especially those latter two guys, Koepka and Clark. What do you think your approach is going to be on the DraftKings side of things at the top of the board? Are you going to just lean into how well Scheffler and Xander are projecting, or are you going to say these other guys just have too much win equity, too much talent to be as contrarian as they are?
I think you just kind of build on narratives, right? So I think that you can kind of approach it two ways, especially for a guy like me who play like a 3 max, where I kind of have two totally different builds, right? You have one that may start, Scheffler and Schauffele, just like you were just talking about. You could just start there, and then there's so many guys down there in that I think are way underpriced in the 63, 64. The Lucas Glovers and the Taylor Moores, that you can just go ahead and put. Adam Schenk is down there, and he's playing really good right now. Like, there's just so many guys down there that you could mix with them and still get some win equity in the middle of the board there too. So. And then I think the other side of that is try to get the guys that are just going to be super low owned and try to hit a home run, right? Like you said, a Rahm fits that bill perfectly. I have a hard time believing McIlroy won't gain a ton of ownership, but you're right. If you just looked across like what we know of as the industry, he's not getting much love.
Yeah, I think you said that pretty well, and that's kind of where I'm going to take it, which is, there are a number of guys like in the cheap range, the $6,000, the $7,000 range, that project quite well. Some of them are pretty chalky. Some of them are really contrarian. If you choose some of the chalky guys down there, Adam Scott, Siwoo Kim, guys we know we're going to project well kind of week in, week out. Russell Henley is in that same bucket. Okay, now maybe you do want to get a little bit more contrarian at the top. Maybe you pair those guys with Koepka, Clark, or Rory, someone like that. Whereas if you're going to Jake Knapp down here, if you're going to Lucas Glover, these really contrarian guys who, again, project quite well, now you say, all right, I've got the contrarian upside way down there. I can lean into the chalk with Scotty. I can lean into it with Xander. So that's the way that I'm going to build. It's the way I pretty much always build, pairing high probability plays with contrarian upside. Whether the high probability plays are the expensive guys, the cheap guys, doesn't really matter. That combination, high probability plays with contrarian upside plays, is just the recipe for success.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up Russell Henley's name. You get a guy in form coming to a place that theoretically should fit him pretty well, especially if it stays firm and fast. There's just some interesting guys right there. I hope Minwoo Lee gets overlooked a lot just because he's maybe what people would call out of form. It's just an interesting deal. I don't know what to expect from guys like Rahm and Koepka. And we've been through this before, especially with Koepka. I think Rahm will play fine. I think he's finishing like the top 8 every start this year. Like, it's not like he's playing terrible. He just hasn't won. And I think everybody expected him to go over there and just dominate. Man, those guys are still really good over there. Like, it's not like he's playing a minor league baseball game, right? He's still playing against some of the best players in the world. The guys like Koepka are always hard for me because I always want to say no way you can just take it to another gear for the majors, but he does it time in and time out, and it's mind-boggling to me. But I just can't get behind that theory. I want to exclude him completely from my player pool and just move on.
Yeah, I mean, he's such an enigma in that way because he does turn it on in a way that few others can, and people buy into it in the sense that like he's what 20-1 in the outright market, so people are giving him all of that respect, and yet then you transfer to the DFS side of things, and he's going to be like 10%, maybe even less in single entries. So people believe it when they're betting the outright, but whether they believe it or not on the DFS side of things, it's like maybe they do still believe that he has the upside, but they just think he's got way too much downside to pay that much for a player. Whatever the case is, it almost makes me think the opposite, that he's a better DFS play than an outright bet, because the outright number already assumes that he's going to be the same Koepka that we've seen in majors over the last few years, over the last 5-10 years, whatever. Whereas the DFS side of things says, hey, there's a big chance that he just stinks. And if you think that he's just the guy who's going to show up and contend every major season, then he's way underowned. So that might be the way that I play Brooks. It's a little early to make that decision. I almost think that there's a chance that his ownership either balloons from this point, that everyone has that thought, or it goes in the opposite direction. And instead of thinking he might be a little under 10%, it's like he might be a little under 5%, and then I'd be all in. So going to let ownership really make that decision. Where I want to be next, this has been a season full of these unlikely winners. We've had a bunch of breakout candidates, start with Matthew Pavone, and then we got Nick Dunlap. We got Jake Knapp, Akshay Bhatia. So my question for you, Justin, of the guys who have been unlikely winners, but specifically like these guys, not necessarily Peter Malnati, but the guys who are potentially breakout candidates and could be some of the best players in the world sooner than we think, who of those guys do you think has a chance to contend this week? And do you think any of them will be at the top of the leaderboard come Sunday?
It's hard for me to say that any of them will be there just because the top of the leaderboard here is so good, generally speaking. I mean, like, not only the guys that we've talked about, but you have the Niemans and the Cam Smiths and the guys that the Siwoo Kims that we haven't really even touched on that I would expect to see battling it up there too. That being said, out of those guys, I mean, I even mentioned it last week that I really liked Bhatia last week because I know it didn't fit the bill of short game, but when you have the ability to strike it like that, your short game doesn't have to be that good. And that's exactly what he did. He just hit it so good it didn't matter. And he did hit a couple of amazing chip shots too that was pretty impressive.
He gained 1.57 strokes per round around the green. It was by far, I think, the best short game performance he's ever had, and it kind of came out of nowhere. I mean, he had lost strokes around the green in 5 of 6 weeks coming in, including the 2 previous weeks at the Cognizant and then the Players. That performance truly came out of nowhere. So, man, that was something to see. But to your point, like, he also gained over a stroke per round off the tee. He gained over 2 strokes per round with his irons. So it was just an all-around phenomenal performance.
But I think he definitely has the ability now that he seems to have figured out a little bit with the broomstick putter. It's really seemed to help him. I think that he's comfortable. He's just getting more comfortable mentally. And I think that, you don't turn pro that young without having the talent to do it. So a guy like that, even coming off of a win, I wouldn't be surprised to see him play good. I think the one that has the most ability is probably Jake Knapp. That being said, he's not exactly in form. He's got to soak in being at the Masters, right? I see him more of just like, hey, here I am at Augusta soaking it in, whereas I think Bhatia coming off a win may be a little bit more motivated and think he has a chance to contend right now.
We talked about the Augusta course fit model a little bit last week, but we can go over it again here. Driving distance, slightly more important than most weeks. Driving accuracy, a little bit less important than most weeks. Strong boost to approach play. Again, a massive boost to short games. And then a very small decline on putting. I don't think that putting is any less important this week. I just think the putting test is different than most weeks. You and I have talked about it. When you get to Augusta, these are lightning fast greens. The undulation is ridiculous. So it really becomes all about your ability to gauge speed and then your speed control. So I do think like being a great putter, as long as you're a great putter because of those two things and not because you can hit a straight uphill 8 foot straight uphill into the hole every time, then that is an advantage. Knapp and Nick Dunlap both shine in a couple ways here. They are both longer than they are accurate off the tee, points in their favor. They're both phenomenal putters. And then you get with Knapp, pretty underrated short game, it seems like. And then the iron signal is phenomenal for Knapp because he's been unreal with the irons. We saw it when he was playing great. We've even seen, great iron play from him when things haven't really gone his way in the last couple of weeks, where, he struggled at the Players, he struggled at the API. At Bay Hill, when he finished 57th, when he just exploded in the worst way possible on the weekend, he still gained 0.9 strokes per round with his irons. He's been one of the better iron players in the world this season. So I'm with you. I think Knapp is the guy for me. But, man, I think that Nick Dunlap is a dark horse because he's had instances where his iron play has been great. The thing that's held him back is his accuracy off the tee. Less likely to hurt him this week. And if there's a guy this week who just finds his way to the top of the leaderboard because he's gaining 2.5 strokes per round on the greens, Dunlap seems like he's as likely as anyone else to be that guy.
Yeah, I guess to me, it just goes back to Dunlap is supposed to be playing here as an amateur, not as a pro, right? I mean, that's really where we're at in this deal. If he doesn't win, I mean, he's still in the field, and we're not even talking about him.
That's true. But the reason we wouldn't be talking about him is because in that scenario, he didn't go out and win a golf tournament, and then he didn't show up and finish T11 at the Houston Open. Like, yeah, it's a really unique situation, and he's here probably a lot earlier than anyone expected. But he's now had 2 tournaments where he's gained over 2 true strokes per round. He's had one, the win at the Amex, where he gained almost 4 per round. Like, the guy has the ceiling. We've seen it to contend here.
Yeah, I just, like I said, I think it's an age and just a maturity factor where I think, with Jake Knapp being so much older and just so much more seasoned, I think he can take to it a lot better than somebody that young and what they're at. I think there's a lot to be said of just the maturity difference.
What do you think of the idea that course history and course experience are more important here at Augusta than anywhere else? Do you kind of buy that narrative?
I think it's just more being okay with the surroundings. I think if you take the Masters out of the equation and just make it where they're playing Augusta, right, and it doesn't have the Masters aura, I don't know that it's that big of a deal. I think a lot of it is just getting used to what you're doing and the surroundings, and because you've been there, like how different it feels than going to just a regular PGA Tour event. It's just not the same. And the butterflies, I'm sure the players get, and just, not a single blade of grass out of place. Like, everything's perfect. I mean, it's just, I just think it's more of a situational than it is a golf course thing.
In terms of narratives that go around the industry that we like to discuss, this one at least is grounded in data. Like, there is data to suggest that course history and course experience matter more here than anywhere else. Some would even say it's the only place that those things matter. I think that argument misses 2 things. Number one, times change, and the main argument for why those things would matter here is that, hey, it's a really unique golf course where having some inside information, having, what you've learned in the past can really help you. But as I said, times change. And one of the ways they've changed is that guys have more data on the golf course than ever before. They come in with a much better game plan. It's why we've seen guys like Morikawa, Will Zalatoris come in and kind of have success from the get-go because they've been able to come up with a game plan that rookies or debutantes, if you will, 10, 20 years ago, never had. They just went in kind of blind and it was just, well, I guess I'll figure it out as we go. Guys have more data. They're more prepared now. And a big one that you and I have talked about is, like, it seems like the veterans on tour today are a hell of a lot more willing to share their wisdom with the younger guys, where previous generations were like, hell no, I'm not giving you any of my competitive advantage. That's all I've got over you. And now guys are saying, you know what? Yeah, let's play a practice round together. I'll take you through the most important holes. We've seen Phil Mickelson, really dive in, especially on like how certain holes it's more difficult for a left-hander, certain holes it's easier. Did you see his conversation about the 10th hole, by the way?
I didn't. I haven't watched anything this week yet. So
It was unbelievable. So he talked about how the 10th hole is a lot more difficult for lefties to hit the ball close to a right pin than for righties, because if you miss into that right bunker and you're a right-handed player, you've got to stop that ball pretty quickly. So what do? You open the face, you slice across it, you create some slice spin, the ball lands and spins into the uphill. So you can stop a ball pretty close from that right bunker. A lefty trying to do the same thing, open the face, create some cut spin to get it to stop quicker. That spin takes it across the green downhill. And so Phil's like, I can have the exact same shot as a righty. He hits it easily to 2 feet. I hit an amazing shot. It rolls out to 12 feet, something like that. So, little tidbits like that guys 10, 20 years ago in their first time playing Augusta, they would never hear about. Now they get all that information. So I think the advantage to having played here in the past and even to having had success here in the past just means a hell of a lot less now than it ever has before.
Yeah, and I would also argue that people don't play golf different anymore. Everybody basically looks at the data and they all are going to play. Most are going to play the holes the same exact way or attempt to, right? They're all trying to hit it as far up the fairway as they can get it. They're all going to be more aggressive on the par fives. You don't get as much, difference in just or just the way that they plod their way around the golf course, right? Like before there was a time where, certain guys, was it Zach Johnson laid up every single day, I think? And then, there were certain times where that was a thing. We just don't see that anymore.
Mm-hmm. Not only that, but I think a really underrated point here is that think of the coverage. It wasn't that long ago where all we got as fans where we saw 9 holes on Thursday, 9 holes on Friday, 9 holes on Saturday, and then maybe 12 holes of the leaders on Sunday or something like that. Now you can watch every shot of every player. So if you are a guy who's I really don't know if I want to lay up or go for it on 13, or if I decide to lay up on 13, I don't know where I want to lay up to. What shot do I want? Well, go on the Masters app from a previous year, whatever. Just watch what everyone has done on that hole. Where are they laying up? Where are the guys hitting it close from versus where are the guys, leaving it 20 feet short because they're afraid to take on some bunker, something like that. So again, every single player just comes in so much more prepared than debutantes have ever been before. And I think that leads to a much smaller advantage to having a history here, having the experience.
Yeah, I agree. I still think there's something to it, right? I still think that everybody still has to adapt to what's going on in their surroundings and to the golf course. I just think, to your point, and this doesn't necessarily go just to Augusta National, right? This is pretty much everywhere. It just seems like it gets more attention this week because everybody has this notion that you have to have played here a bunch. So I think this is a conversation we could literally have every single week. It just seems to people seem to take it more serious here.
Yeah, and to that point, it's a much more important conversation to have this week because we actually see this showing up in DraftKings ownerships. We see this showing up on the Vegas odds board. Jake Knapp, 300-1 is one of my outrights this week, and at I believe it's $6,500. Yeah, $6,600 on DraftKings. Right now, I'm thinking he's going to be 3% owned or something like that. Whereas if you just put them on a generic golf course this week, if you didn't have this narrative, but it was this exact field and this pricing, at that price, he's probably 10 to 15%. Wyndham Clark at $10,000 wouldn't be 7-8%, whatever he's going to be. He'd be 15 to 20 because he continues to show up and contend in these fields. So it's a really important conversation to have because if you think strongly one way or the other, there are big time opportunities to take advantage all around the industry, whether it's the betting board, whether it's DraftKings.
Yeah, and I think any kind of if we want to talk anything about the golf course and what it matters, the experience matters would be on the greens, because you do have to have some imagination, and you do, there is some different lines that maybe some of the guys that have been there more see than maybe the new guys. But that's to me, that's about it. If they can get in there and get comfortable and be okay with the surroundings, Jake Knapp, and I mean Taylor Moore right down there. Like, I don't know what you think his ownership's going to be, but he's been playing really well, and he's the type of guy that could get in there and not really pay attention to what's going on around him and just go play golf.
Yeah, I think Taylor could be one of the more popular values, but even if he's one of the more popular, like low 6,000 players, he's still probably under 10%. But that's a good segue. Why don't we talk about the outrights that I've already placed? Because Taylor Moore is another one. So I mentioned Jake Knapp 300 to 1, Taylor Moore 250 to 1. That was an each way. I don't know exactly what he's available at now. Let's get the prop shop up and let's take a look. So Jake Knapp, he is still available. Oh, he went up to 350 to 1 on FanDuel and Caesars. So you can go take advantage of that one. If you want an each way, his best number is 200 to 1. So I'd rather just go for the pure outright. If Knapp has a ceiling performance, he's going to have a chance to win. So I think that's a good one. Taylor Moore, you can argue, has a little bit less of a ceiling. So his Masters number 350 to 1. If you just want the pure outright, in his case, I do want an each way. So I would go bet 365, still has 250 to 1. That's where I'd go on Taylor Moore. Next guy for me, Lucas Glover. So just kind of hanging out in this huge range. The similarity here, Glover especially, iron play, short game. That's his entire game right now. So no surprise that he made this list. Also one of the more volatile players on tour. His pure outright is up to 400 to 1 on FanDuel and Caesars, right where it's been all week. And his each way has fallen to 250 to 1 on Bet365, 200 to 1 on Bet Rivers. That was available at 300 as recently as last week. So those are the first three big ones. Then we get to some more reasonable numbers. I'm sure you'll like this one. Siwoo Kim 125 to 1. That is now available. Oh, he is all the way down to 80. So got some really nice closing line value there on Siwoo. Don't really like those numbers anymore, to be honest. I think I would have cut that off around 100 to 1 or 90 to 1, I think is what I put in the Discord. And then finally, Adit Thagala, 50 to 1. He's still available at 55 for the pure outright. The each way is down to 45. I think I just prefer the pure outright at 55 to the each way at 45. What do you think, Justin?
Yeah, Thagala's got the ceiling that I think we're all looking for, right? And he's become a mainstay, like Siwoo and Adam Scott, basically on our show. So yeah, Thagala is a great call. I got Thagala at 58 to 1, which I don't know how, but and then I also, the only other one I played, and it's strictly just because of his numbers too high, is I got Min Woo Lee at 96 to 1.
Nice.
He's just I said it last year at the Players, he is a super talented person. When he figures it out, he's going to win a big golf tournament. Just hoping it's this week.
One other guy that I want to talk about from an outright perspective. What's your take on Cam Smith? I'm seeing him as high as 50 to 1 now on FanDuel Sportsbook. Our model has him where his fair odds are pretty damn close to 50 to 1. So I'm not seeing a ton of value from a data perspective. However, it's really difficult to model Cam Smith right now. We don't get any kind of shot link data on the LIV Golf Tour. We don't know how much he cares about LIV and his performance there. I think one interesting thing is he talked last season about the fact that he felt like he came into Augusta underprepared. And because he talked about that, I think he's going to have a different game plan this year. I think he will be more prepared. And in terms of like just long-term fit, who are the best players in the world with their combination of approach play and around the green play? There are very few clearly better than Cam Smith. In fact, I might say Cam Smith in the long run is the second best combination of iron play and short game, only behind Scotty at this point.
I love Cam Smith this week. I was hoping he played a little bit better last week. But yeah, 50-1, I still think is too high. And I think the number's that high strictly because he's playing live and because of the lack of data there compared to the PGA Tour data. And that's just all these odds are basic algorithms, right? That's how everybody in Vegas is setting them. It's all pretty. I will say we've seen a lot more movement in odds this week than I would say is normal. I don't know if you've noticed that, but it just seems like there's been a lot of numbers that have really moved a lot of directions. I mean, Morikawa's gone way up. There's just been some interesting movement, in my opinion, that we don't really see. And I think a lot of it is the unknowns with the live of how much money how much handle, the books we're going to have on each player and with the live guys coming back in. And I think if Cam Smith was a PGA Tour player, this number would be about 28 to 30-1. So yeah. I know that like the data says 50-1, but I just don't believe that that's reality.
He has played 5 times on live this season since the start of February. I want to see last year what that number was like. So last year they had only played 3 events. He had 1 good one, 2 bad ones coming in, finished 34th, didn't drive the ball well, and then kind of rebounded the rest of the year, right? He finished 9th at the PGA Championship, 4th at the US Open, tied 33rd at the Open Championship. So it wasn't the best major season, but he did show like he's still one of the best players in the world. And again, he is a phenomenal fit for Augusta. So I think that 34th finish or whatever he finished at last year was super, super disappointing, not just because he had won the previous major in the Open Championship, but also because like if he's going to win any major, Augusta's the one that fits his game the best. So I really think that we could see a phenomenal performance from him this week. And like you said, he's definitely being undervalued, but it brings into a good question, which is the best players on live this season haven't been the guys that we think of as the best players. Hasn't been Rahm. It hasn't been DJ. It hasn't been Cam Smith. It's been Joaquin Niemann. Patrick Reed has had 2 great events in a row. Like, if we see live guys contend this week, do you think it's the guys who have played the best this season, or do you think it's the guys who have just been the best players historically?
I think it's the deal is we just don't know the preparation that these guys are doing. And I think that matters more than most anything else, right? I think that Rahm, unlike others, has the ability to just flip a switch. And speaking of live guys, and I meant to talk about this earlier, but is Koepka the only guy from the live event that is, I think he's the same or even less odds to win here than what he was at Doral? Like, that's amazing to move from a live event to the Masters and have the exact same win odds. Like, yeah, I would expect the guys that fit here. I think Niemann will play good. I think he's hungry to show people he belongs to be here. So I think he plays really good this week. And I do think Cam Smith, DJ's shown that he can play well here. I just don't – we just don't know which DJ we're going to get. I mean, I think that's the biggest deal.
I love that point you made on Brooks, by the way. And I think you can make a similar argument on Cam Smith where instead of comparing his odds to what he's been at Doral, look at what he is at Augusta compared to some of these other majors. His best available for the U.S. Open right now is 28-1. His best available for the Open is 22-1. Again, I think he's a better fit for Augusta than maybe any other golf course in the world. So I just absolutely love this number for Cam Smith. And I also think on DraftKings, he's a really interesting option. $8,900. I think he'll be pretty contrarian. Hideki's going to soak up so much of the ownership in that range. I think people will go down to Finau. They'll go down to Cam Young. They'll go down to Shane Lowry and Matt Fitzpatrick. Spieth is right above him. Like he's in just an area where I don't think anyone's going to click him. Even people who love live and want to use an under-owned live guy. Dustin Johnson is $100 cheaper than him. So people might click DJ before they click Cam Smith. He might be one of the keys to success for me this week.
I love it. I think I've built 4 lineups already, and I think he's in 3 of them. He's just I think he's just like you said. He wants to be here this year. He wants to contend. All his interviews, everything he said, he's saying the right things, and you can get a guy that fits here really well with really low ownership. I mean, if he wins, then we got a serious chance of winning something big, I believe.
And I think another key with him is that he's one of the few guys who has a number of paths to contending here, where he could have the type of week that Hideki had when Hideki won the green jacket, where he's just unbelievably good around the green, just dominates because of his creative and phenomenal short game. He could have a week where he gains 2.5 strokes per round putting. He could have a week where he's just the best iron player in the field. He's got so many paths to dominance that, again, just to me, he's completely undervalued all around the board.
And he's also proven that he's got stones. I mean, that shot that he hit it to win the Players is one of the best shots that I've ever seen. So, like, he's not scared of the moment. And that was before he had made it. Obviously, he's in the Players, but he hadn't really made the name that he has now. That's one of the best, and that's a really, really hard shot that you'll see similar type of pitches like that at Augusta. And so I know he's not going to be afraid of them, and that makes me like him even more, right? That the moment's not going to be too big for him.
Before we talk about our one and done selection this week, one last thing I want to talk about: the conditions of the golf course. It sounds to me, I don't know if you've heard differently, but it sounds to me like Augusta's in as good of a shape as it's ever been. The greens are rock hard. They're acting like trampolines. We have forecasts of 35 mile per hour gusts on Thursday, 35 mile per hour gusts on Friday, potentially some rain Thursday that could maybe dampen the course a little bit, but it's breezy today. It's going to be breezier tomorrow. Is this golf course just going to be an all-out test and almost to the point where we're seeing carnage, or what are your expectations conditions-wise?
I think it really just comes down to what they want to do with that sub-air system. They're allowed to change the moisture so much. That being said, I think we found out when we had the Fall Masters that they're not gonna run it during play. So that changes their ability to change it too much. So I don't know how much rain they end up getting. I mean, I looked at the map earlier, and I live in Dallas, and it was raining from Dallas to Atlanta straight down I-20 the entire way. So how much of that rain they get in Augusta, I don't know. That definitely will change things. As of right now, they're going to have a lot more difficulty getting moisture back into the greens than taking it out, which I like. I like the idea of firm greens. And I think it even goes more to your point of Cam Smith, right? He can hit it through the moon with his irons. Like, the firmer that they get that place, it goes to more guys like that. I hope they make it play hard, especially for a place that's no rough. Like, you got to make the greens firm and then, get some wind, and we might actually get to see a real golf tournament.
Tomorrow, Zach Graham and I are doing a Prize Picks and Underdog play show for the Masters. He and I are hitting at a combined 61% on picks combined in baseball and basketball so far this year, NBA and MLB. We're going to look to continue that success into the golf, and some really cool kind of strategies this week exist, where one of them, Thursday and Friday, look extremely windy, could be really, really difficult scoring conditions. The weekend then, Saturday, Sunday, the wind calms down. Maybe we get a much more scoreable golf course. So potentially, a bet against players on Thursday and Friday, bet on players Saturday and Sunday. Maybe Prize Picks will overcorrect, something like that. So lots of paths to success for us on the Prize Pick side of things. Make sure you're watching that show again. That'll be tomorrow on the FTN YouTube channel. So check that out. You can also find it on my Twitter at AlexBlickle1 or at Kawaisenberg DFS for Zach's as well. All right, let's do some one and done talk and maybe even find our one and done selection for the week. Where are you thinking to start things off?
I mean, we've talked the whole time about being a live guy. I think that we're probably going to stay with that thinking, or at least I would go. I think it really just comes down to we use up Rahm here and what his ownership's going to be. If we can get Rahm super low owned here, I think that's the way to go. If not, then I wouldn't be opposed to going to Cam Smith.
Yeah, so that's my thought. I think it's Cam because I think most people are either going Rom or Brooks. I think those will be the first two live clicks. I don't think that many are going to go to Cam Smith in large part because I think a lot of people are just going to look at what these guys did last year and assume it's going to work the same way. So Rom won, Brooks was second. Okay. One of those guys is going to be at the top of the leaderboard again. What did Cam Smith do? Well, he didn't play well at Augusta and then played well at the other majors. So maybe he just needs time to get into the season. Like it was a 1-year sample. Just toss it out the window. So I think we could get Cam Smith at pretty low ownership, which, you and I talked about. If we were in a good position, which we are, we could afford to be chalky and just play this the same way that everyone else is going to do, going to live guys. I think we have a chance to use one of the best, if not the best, live players for Augusta National right here, right now. Like I think Rom is clearly number one, but I think I'd put Cam Smith at number two.
Well, and I think the other thing of this is like we kind of joked around about this a few times of like, hey, if we finish 100th, way to go, good job, whatever. I don't even know what it pays. Like it doesn't matter. But if we win and get a chance right here to get a 1%, 2% on Cam Smith win, and all of a sudden have a real chance of winning this one and done deal, then it all of a sudden becomes a lot different. So I like kind of I don't feel like it's taking a huge chance, but I guess theoretically it is taking a chance because we are going away from a lot of favorites. But the question is going to be to me is how much ownership are guys like Spieth and Justin Thomas and those guys going to gain here. I'm guessing most people have probably used Scheffler already. I don't really know, but I would guess if anybody hasn't, they're using him this week.
Yeah, I mean, so Scheffler's an interesting one because it almost doesn't matter what his ownership is. It's like anybody near the top is near the top because they either had the Scheffler API win or they had the Scheffler players win like we did. So if he wins as a chalky Masters pick, like no one's passing us because of that. They're just maybe getting into the same range that we're at. So that's kind of a nice kind of layer of protection almost.
Yeah. I mean, we've obviously we talked about that. We got the most out of him that we could possibly expect to get, which obviously works out great. I just don't know who else that I would lean into in this situation besides Rom or Cam Smith. I don't see any, like, I don't believe that Brooks Koepka can keep playing terrible golf and then come here or come to the majors and just play so good. Like I always want to see something. And you know what? He could continue to keep proving me wrong. I mean, I'm not going to say it's not going to happen. I just wouldn't. It's just not something that I want to risk. Now, if he plays good this week and then he plays a couple of good live events and then we get to the US Open, then we can talk about him. But, if we can get if Koepka and Rom can soak up all the live ownership this week, that leaves, us a chance to maybe capitalize on that in the other majors.
Yeah, and I don't necessarily think that Cam Smith will be 1%, but I do think he'll be at minimum fourth in ownership amongst live guys, where I think it'll be Rom number one, probably Brooks number two, and then I would say Neiman is more likely to be the third most popular than Cam Smith, maybe even fifth behind DJ as well. So I do think he'll be really contrarian, 3 to 5%, something like that would be my guess. But then, you also have, you mentioned Scotty. I think Hideki will be one of the more popular one and done picks. Xander will be one of the more popular one and done picks. Rory will be one of the more popular picks. So I think Cam Smith's going to be way down the board.
Yeah, I like it. I think I would have to hear something from him to change. I'd have to hear an interview where to really something that really, I don't know, made me second guess myself out of him, speaking to change. So I think that's probably going to be where I would want to stay. But, we'll see over the next couple of days.
Yeah. All right. Sounds like we might be locked in already on Cam Smith. Ownership projections will be up this afternoon. As usual, GPP scores along with those. Hot takes tomorrow. Josh is going to come out with a really fun betting article today. So We got you covered over at FTN Daily and FTN Bets. We will see you in those Discords. We'll catch you next time. Thanks for tuning in.